David Clendon.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I'm pleased to stand for the Greens and to speak in support of this bill. On the face of it, typically the restructuring, some amendments of a government body might not excite much emotion or passion, except, of course, that this bill does relate to what is undoubtedly the single most important historic site in New Zealand. And for that reason, of course, it's important that the work be done and that we get it right. And I believe, sir, the Green position is that largely this does seem to be well-intentioned and a well-drafted piece of legislation that does affect some necessary and some positive changes. And for those reasons, we, of course, will support it. It's taken some time to get to this point. If I understand correctly, there was a review undertaken by the Ministry of Arts and Heritage, Arts and Culture, as it may have been then, in 2006-2008. And there were some concerns about the potential for constitutional conflict in the various roles of the government, the Prime Minister particularly, and indeed the Governor-General. And it's interesting to note that in 2007, the then Governor-General, Sir Anand Satyanand, broke with convention by choosing not to take up a seat that was available to him on the board, which one can only assume reflected a level of unease, perhaps, of course, with that gentleman of the highest integrity. And I think there's a signal in that all has not been well with the existing structure. So I think it's, as I say, it's a good thing to move on, to look at how we can do better. I think it is critically important that we retain a couple of the key characteristics of the original board as it was formatted. And those characteristics are those of representativeness or representation and inclusion. Clearly it was insightful to the extent membership of the board represented Māori with significant mana and connections to the site and to New Zealand more generally, and of course Pākehā and government representatives. When you see names on that original board like Kāwiti, Henare, Mahuta, Williams, these are names that resonate with anybody with the least understanding or exposure to our New Zealand history. And it's important that we retain that quality of representation, the breadth of representation, and the inclusiveness of the representation on the board. And we have no qualms that this bill, in the sense that we think it will achieve that. People with goodwill, there's no reason we cannot continue to retain the best of this, but to make some necessary amendments to it. I believe there was initially some concern that the bill on the face of it appears to be politicians handing away a level of power and control. And that's not something that politicians are wont to do typically, and it perhaps created a little bit of unease or some questions raised, but I think that it's clear this is well intentioned. It does address a potentially concerning constitutional conflict. And we see nothing in this that's not benign and helpful. So I think it's important to acknowledge that Waitangi as a site, as an historic site, and as a dynamic, live, living place, there have been some positive developments there in recent years. The whole ambience, the whole dynamic of the place seems to have picked up. It's a more engaging place. It's in beautiful condition. It's well cared for. It reflects care and concern being put into it. There have been some developments, and I think one would hope that the new board and its new format will continue to have it is an historic site, obviously, but it's also part of our present, part of our future, and it's very encouraging to hear that there are some positive plans afoot to expand the site, to add value to it. I must confess I continue to be surprised by the number of New Zealanders who actually have never set foot on Waitangi. And no doubt there are other places around New Zealand where people have not been, and to my mind it's peculiar. But I do think to the extent that we can add value to the site, make it a more open, a more interesting, more engaging place for those who don't have the close relationship to it that some of us already do. And as I say, the plans afoot, it would seem, will achieve that outcome as well. Sir, I think that's as much as I need to say. As I say, the Greens are very keen and able to support this. We look forward to engaging in the select committee process. One of the things the bill does, of course, is to have a government representative and a person representing the opposition parties. And it's important that that person, particularly the person representing the opposition parties, is selected in a cross-party consensual sort of way. Clearly, an MMP situation does require that there be a level of engagement before that appointment is made to ensure that whoever stands in that role will have the support of all of the opposition parties. And indeed, I guess the same applies for the government representative, given the likelihood that the government of any day will constitute a number of different parties under our MMP system. So, sir, we look forward to this. We think it's well-intentioned. We think it'll deliver good outcomes, and we'll be pleased to vote for its process through the House. Kia ora.
Speaker.
Honourable Tau Henry.
Mr. Speaker, tēnā tātou katoa.